Hi there, Emily Midgett here with you today for this month's installment of Exploring with Emily. Today, instead of a project, I thought I'd talk a bit about some of my favorite watercoloring products and supplies. There are so many different products that it can be overwhelming, especially if you're just starting out. I am by no means an expert, just a card maker who loves to watercolor, and after a few years of sifting through all of the products, these are my favorites. I hope you'll find this list useful. To start, I'd like to talk about brushes. I prefer silver black velvet brushes. These brushes release water beautifully and have a nice fine point, perfect for detail work. I've used a variety of brushes, and I find that these are the brushes for which I reach time and again. The only drawback is that they are quite an investment at the start. They range in price from $10 to almost $60. There's no need to have all of the brushes though. 2 to 3 brushes in different sizes will be plenty. I find that I use the round number 4, number 6, and number 12 brushes the most. The number 4 is great for detail work due to the super fine tip that you can achieve. The round number 6 is my go-to brush for the vast majority of my painting. It provides a nice clean point while also giving the option of covering a fairly wide area in one swipe of your brush. The water releases very smoothly and evenly, which I prefer over any other brushes. The number 12 brush is the largest of the 3, also making it the most expensive, but this brush is what I use when I am watercoloring backgrounds or doing wet-on-wet painting. It holds a great deal of water and paint, so it's great for getting wide coverage with a minimum of effort. You can see here that it moves the color around effortlessly because it releases water so well. Of course, you might already have brushes that you love and have no need to invest in anything new. These brushes are just my personal preference, and I've found them to be well worth the investment. The Waffle Flower Media Mat is the next tool I'd like to discuss. It was released last year at Creativation, and it's a really valuable tool when doing watercoloring. One side is comprised of 12 square wells, which are perfectly sized to fit a dye ink cube such as Distress inks. I love to use the wells for liquid watercolors particularly. It creates a very nice palette, easily cleaned, and the recessed wells help to keep the mess to a minimum. It's made of silicone, so it won't move on your work surface, and it's super easy to clean up. I also like to do ink blending on the open area, again for the easy cleanup. Next, I'd like to discuss the stamp chamois or tidy towel. This super absorbent cloth is perfect for stamping in general and watercoloring in particular. After cleaning my brush in my water jar, I dab excess water from my paintbrush onto the damp cloth to help prevent blooms or diluting the color. It's also super useful for vacuuming up excess water. If I accidentally lay down too much water on my watercolor paper, I can get my paintbrush fairly dry on the stamp chamois, then put the dried brush to the wet watercolor paper, and the dry brush will pull up the excess watercolor or color. Definitely an underrated tool in your craft room, but one that I find to be a necessity. Now let's talk paper. Paper is an extremely personal choice. There are some very inexpensive brands available, but as with paintbrushes, you'll get what you pay for. I've found that the more inexpensive papers don't allow the color to move very easily and start to disintegrate quickly. I have tried several brands of watercolor paper, and I've found that Arches cold press and hot press watercolor paper are my watercolor paper of choice. The hot press paper is very smooth, which is a great choice for stamping those super detailed stamps or for use when heat embossing. I do find that the color sinks down into the hot press paper more quickly, making it somewhat more difficult to maneuver. But as long as you work quickly, hot press paper is a fantastic choice. I do, however, use cold press paper the vast majority of the time. It's very textured, but this texture creates a more forgiving surface as well as holding up to multiple layers of water beautifully without any pilling. Here, I have a side-by-side comparison of the two papers. I have laid down some fairly concentrated liquid watercolor on both styles of paper and left it to sit for a few seconds. I then used my clean, wet paintbrush to try to move the color, and you can see that the color on the cold press paper moves beautifully despite having sat for a few seconds to soak into the paper, while the hot press paper leaves a harsh line even after attempting to move the color with quite a bit of water. As I attempt to maneuver the color with water on the hot press, you can also see that the hot press starts to pill or disintegrate a little more quickly. The hot press paper works well if you move quickly, but I personally prefer the freedom that the cold press paper provides for the majority of my watercoloring. As I've said before, Paper is a personal preference. I would encourage you to try a few different brands to see which one suits your painting style the best. Now let's discuss ink. We're stampers, so the majority of our watercoloring is going to be done on a stamped image, right? Other than heat embossing, I find the Hero Arts Intensified Black ink and Fade Out ink from Ink on 3 are the two inks for which I reach 90% of the time. Intensified Black is both waterproof and safe for alcohol markers, making it an all-purpose ink in my craft room. The Ink on 3 Fade Out ink stamps your image in a very pale grayish beige that seems to disappear as you watercolor. I have found that the Fade Out ink works best when combined with Arches cold press watercolor paper, with very little issue with feathering. Now, watercolors. That's the whole reason for the video, right? If you're a beginner watercolorist, or even if you're like me and just like to collect all of the mediums, Pinkfresh Studio and Hero Arts have some brilliant liquid watercolors that are perfect for starting out your watercoloring collection. Both brands come in half-ounce bottles, and while Hero Arts watercolors come in glass bottles and the Pinkfresh come in plastic bottles, both come with a handy eyedropper for the top so that you can easily add as many or as few drops of watercolor to your palette. This is also great for mixing because if you find a certain combination of colors that you love, you can easily recreate that secondary color with these handy droppers. These inks are pigment-based, which makes them beautifully vibrant and easily diluted with water. They are a wonderfully economic option for someone wanting to start watercoloring because they are sold in individual bottles, and you can also purchase the Pinkfresh watercolors as a set so you can mix and match as you go. I will say that the color palette on each is quite different. The Hero Arts colors are a bit more along the primary spectrum and a bit more muted, while the Pinkfresh Studio color palette is very bright and vibrant. To demonstrate, I have dropped some of the pink from Hero Arts and the bubblegum from Pinkfresh onto my waffle flower mat. As you can see, both colors move so easily on the Arches cold press watercolor paper. But while the Hero Arts pink has a bit of a warm undertone, the Pinkfresh bubblegum has a bright purple undertone, making it more vibrant and almost neon at times. Obviously, you don't have to buy two entire lines of watercolors, as there are a few overlaps in the rainbow, but each line has gaps in the rainbow that are nicely filled by the other brand. The two brands also work very seamlessly together. Here I have dropped some Dandelion from Hero Arts and some Aquamarine from Pinkfresh onto my waffle flower mat. You can see how easily they blend together to create a completely custom color. The two color palettes complement each other beautifully, making them both crafty necessities in my opinion. I love when you can mix and match products from different companies to create one fantastic project. Now let's talk about Daniel Smith watercolors. These are professional grade watercolors with a variety of over 250 colors available. These watercolors come in 5 or 15 milliliter tubes, and Ellen Hutson carries a huge variety of colors and paint tube sizes in the store. They are highly pigmented colors, and believe me when I tell you that a little goes a very long way. I will say that these beautiful watercolors require a bit of an investment to start. I have been working on my collection gradually for a few years, saving up my pennies and splurging for several colors at once. I've had the majority of these colors for over 2 years and have hardly made a dent in them. They really do last for quite a while. I have put them in a palette that was given to me as a gift and created a laminated palette chart so that I know which colors I'm working with. I love the Daniel Smith colors so much that I may also have another palette with even more colors, but there is absolutely no need to have all of the colors. Some people collect stamps and I collect coloring mediums. I allowed the colors to dry or cure in the palette, which gives me the freedom to just wet whichever color with which I'm going to work just enough for my project and allowing it to dry back in the palette, which reduces waste. I don't want to waste any of those beautiful paints by squeezing them out each time I paint. Now for those who are just starting their Daniel Smith collection, Daniel Smith does offer dot charts, which are a great way to sample the colors available. The dot chart that I have here is a 66 dot chart. It has a variety of styles of watercolors available, including the Primatech, which are created from natural pigments, as well as the regular watercolors and luminescent colors. There's also a dot chart that has all of the watercolors on it, so you can see every single color available. The dots come on watercolor paper so that you can pick up some color on your paintbrush and transfer it to your own paper, but you can also spread the color out and see exactly what color the little dabs are. They're a great option to see exactly what colors are available and which colors appeal to you the most before making your first tube purchase. Another option for starting your Daniel Smith collection is the Essentials set. This little box set comes with 6 primary shades, 3 warm and 3 cool. I've done a video discussing the myriad of secondary color combinations that are available using just these 6 colors, and I'll link to it below. As you can see from these little swatches that I've created, you receive a bright yellow, a golden yellow, a bright orangey red, a cool pinky red, a deep cobalt blue, and a pretty cool blue, which are all of the colors that you need to create a beautifully vibrant rainbow of colors. I have created all of the colors in the rainbow using just these 6 shades. As long as you know a bit about color theory and color mixing, you can create basically any shade using just these 6 colors. A very economical way to start your collection. Now there are 2 individual Daniel Smith shades that I find to be very useful for adding depth and shadows, Neutral Tint and Moon Glow. Neutral Tint is a lovely shade of gray that is truly a neutral with no cool or warm undertones. It's great for adding shadows to your painted images, as well as watercoloring beautiful neutral backgrounds and toning down particularly bright shades of watercolor. Moon Glow is a pleasant shade of grayish lavender. I use this frequently to add shadows to my watercolored images, as lavender is a great way to indicate shadows and depth. You can see that I added just a touch of these 2 grays to my partially watercolored peony image, adding some subtle shadows to the petals. Your own natural color palette preferences will dictate your color choices for the most part, but I do find that these 2 individual neutrals are always a fantastic and useful addition to your color palette. Well, that's all for my video today. If you're an aspiring watercolorist wanting to start your watercoloring journey, I hope you will find some of these tips useful. Of course, my own personal preferences have dictated my choices in this video, but I have certainly experimented with quite a lot of products, and these are by far my favorites. If you liked this video, please give us a thumbs up, and for more product information, head over to the Hutson blog. Thank you so much for watching, and have a marvelous day.